very strong vote outcomes for the vice president in Metro Atlanta and some other parts of the state.
So break that down. What do you think that means?
Well, what it means is, for now, going back to our estimate, 50-50, that's by county, statewide. We go back to that overall estimate of Georgia at 50-50. That means as we get closer, as more of Metro Atlanta comes in, there is at least more of a buffer for former President Trump. It is not decisive. It is not determinative because we don't have a call here yet. But in general, and Michael Whatley was talking about, what are these early indicators? They're just seeing higher turnout, higher vote totals at the margins in some of the redder counties of southeast Georgia and other parts of northern Georgia as well.
Major Garrett, thank you. I want to turn to Ed O'Keefe, our senior White House correspondent. I understand you have some new reporting.
Well, part of why things remain so tight there in Georgia is if you look at those counties around Atlanta, and maybe Major can zoom in on some of them, what the Harris campaign is seeing is real encouragement there. That, in fact, she's running ahead of President Biden in some of those ex-urban counties around Atlanta, higher totals than what the president got 4 years ago. That is how she wins a state like Georgia tonight. Can you run up the numbers in the suburbs? Can you get young college voters across the country to turn out? Can you lean on the black and Latino voters you need? In Georgia already, we're seeing good indications that the reason she's keeping it even is because Democratic advantages there around Atlanta, the biggest city in the South, may be improving.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you. I want to bring in 60 Minutes correspondent Bill Whitaker, part of our Democracy Watch tonight. And we did see some foreign sources try and interfere with the democratic process today.
Yes, we did. We've been talking to election officials in key battleground states all across the country. The headlines: federal officials are investigating dozens of fake bomb threats at election-related sites all across the country, about 40 in Georgia alone. And federal officials tell us that these threats are picking up as this evening goes on. The federal officials have traced the threats back to an email or back to email accounts in Russia, though they're not yet sure that Russia is the actual source of these threats. But again, these threats have been deemed not to be credible. There's also what CISA, the country's top cybersecurity agency, calls a fire hose of disinformation coming from our foreign adversaries designed to sow doubt in our election system. Election officials across the country are taking an aggressive approach to these claims this year. They're finding the disinformation, they're exposing it, and they're debunking it as quickly as possible. All in all, they tell us they are tracking no national-level incidents that would have an impact on the security of our election infrastructure. And it's an infrastructure they repeatedly assure us has never been more secure.
Well, that is some good news tonight, right, Bill? Yeah, very good news.
Good news indeed.
Yeah, very good news. David, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard all throughout the country, despite this flood of disinformation, despite these bomb threats and others, voting's gone relatively smoothly. There are some places, 5 polling places in Fulton County, 5 polling places in DeKalb County, Georgia, that were ordered to stay open a little bit later because of these bomb threats, but election officials are handling it, and it might lead to some delays in getting those reports out, but Georgia counts very fast, so I'd expect that's going to be resolved pretty quickly.
We are watching it closely. Thank you very much, Bill and David. I want to check in with our correspondents that are in the battleground states with new reporting. Let's start it with the biggest battleground prize, Pennsylvania. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is in Philadelphia. And Weijia, we just keep hearing about big turnout today.
And Nora, both campaigns say they are really excited about what they are seeing because they are seeing high turnout in the places that matter most to them. For the Harris campaign, it is right here in Philadelphia and the city of Pittsburgh that typically votes overwhelmingly blue. I just heard from a campaign source that says that they are overperforming the internal turnout expectations here in Philly, and it continues to look very strong, which was a real concern for them because there was a softening of Democratic turnout over the past several years. 55,000 fewer registered Democrats in this city compared to 2020. And so they are optimistic. As for the Trump campaign, they are seeing, they say, a robust turnout in those rural areas where they have been targeting, especially men, low propensity voters who may not have ever voted at all. And so they say where it matters in the deep red parts, they're getting new voters out. But what is really different, Nora, is the way that they've gotten people to the polls. The Harris campaign ground game has been like a well-oiled machine, with 50 field offices spread across the state, with 110,000 volunteers since her launch, knocking on over 5 million doors. And this is something that they love talking about because they say they have a ground game that the Trump campaign doesn't even touch. But for the Trump team, they own that, and they say, yeah, we have about 24 field offices and we are reaching people, but they've really outsourced the door knocking and the traditional ground game to super PACs, including Elon Musk. And the Harris campaign says that's a real risk because they don't have the same kind of data points that they are getting, so they can target people that they need to get out and vote. So, Nora, tonight the headline is that the turnout is high. We don't know if it's a record, but every official that we've talked to here in Philadelphia, across the state, and certainly in those collar counties in the Philly suburbs are saying they are seeing remarkable numbers.
Yeah, we've heard those stories in Lehigh, that at the university there, that long lines with students still waiting to vote. Weijia Jiang, thank you for that reporting. Let's turn now to Georgia, and congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is in Atlanta. And Nicole, what are you hearing about turnout?
Well, in terms of turnout, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says that more than 800,000 votes have been cast today, and he expects that number to surpass the million mark before the end of the day. That is on top of an additional 4 million ballots that were cast in early voting, which was a record. So that being said, there is some concern, as you all were talking about, that some of those polling locations had to extend their hours due to a number of bomb threats, particularly here in a number of the counties in the metro Atlanta area. For instance, Fulton County had at least 30 bomb threats alone that were either called in or sent via email. That is of particular concern to some Democratic operatives that I talked to who wanted to make sure that those locations that were impacted, the people stayed in line to cast their ballots, particularly because these are not only Democratic strongholds, but in some cases more predominantly black precincts. And in terms of the black turnout, I do want to point to some exit polling data that we have that shows, at least for Vice President Kamala Harris right now, it appears that turnout is hovering somewhere around 86%, which is slightly lower than President Biden back in 2020. But that being said, I've talked to a number of organizers here in the state who emphasize that they are not particularly concerned about the numbers right now, and that in these final days leading up to the election, they really doubled down on places here around Atlanta, DeKalb, Clayton counties, also further south in the state, places like Albany, Georgia. So they are confident that that turnout will be there.
Nicole Killian, thank you for that reporting. Want to check in now with Skylar Henry. He's in the battleground state of North Carolina at a Democratic watch party there in Raleigh. And Skylar, what are you hearing about turnout?
Hey, Nora, good evening to you. Board of Elections officials have indicated that they anticipate that the results here tonight could very well surpass what we saw in 2020 in terms of voter turnout. 75% of registered voters back then came out to vote. They anticipate that number either meeting or passing that. Both the Harris and Trump campaigns say that they are confident about what's happening here in the Tar Heel state. The Trump campaign enthused about those early voting totals in that Republicans outpaced Democrats. Meanwhile, for the Harris campaign, their team says that they are confident as well, given the fact that they invested the resources that they did here in North Carolina so early on in the cycle. They had more than 29 field offices around the state, more than 350 election workers here as well. And we're talking about something that I just received from a Harris Walz campaign representative that said that they are focused on the ground game. They say close races come down to turnout and ground game. We have the ground game advantage, and so we will see there. But the Harris campaign says that they're also enthused about the inroads that they're making and those urban areas, especially in Charlotte, in Winston-Salem. Here in the Research Triangle, that's where Raleigh is, as well as Asheville. Now, Speaking of Western North Carolina, obviously Hurricane Helene hit that area incredibly hard. Many people say that they were concerned about what turnout could potentially look like out there. We just got off the phone with the Buncombe County Board of Elections chair, who said that they set an early voting record with more than 116,000 votes cast. So something certainly surreal given the fact of all the devastation that they had to deal with. We should point out very quickly that there are several precincts that have to be temporarily put up in tents, and that could potentially impact when we see those numbers come back to those election offices, because roads are still washed out. There are temporary road structures that had to be put in place. It is still difficult to move around in some parts of Western North Carolina, and so that could take a little bit of time in terms of the results that we see here tonight.
Skylar, you did such excellent reporting following Hurricane Helene, so I know you know that area, the devastation that they faced, and it's good to see that many of them will be able to vote. They surged that area with polling places. Great reporting, Skylar. Thank you so much. I want to turn now to John Dickerson. There is some new exit poll data coming in. We are focused like a laser on Georgia, too, because that was the first, of course, these battlegrounds to close. And one of the key questions is that composite of the electorate.
Yep.
What about independents?
Well, the story about independents coming into this race was that Joe Biden won them in Georgia. The Democrats are not winning them. So Kamala Harris.
He won them 4 years ago.
4 years ago in 2020. I'll give you the picture. In 2020, independents represented 28% of the electorate. Joe Biden got 53% of that vote. Donald Trump got 44% of the vote. That was in 2020. So Biden won them by 9 points. If we look now at what's on your screen, you see that Donald Trump has 54 and Harris has 43. So Donald Trump, according to the emerging picture from the exit polls, is up by 11 points in Georgia. And if you don't mind, I'll spin you through the independents in North Carolina and Pennsylvania as well.
Absolutely.
So in North Carolina in 2020, Biden beat Trump by just 4 points. They were 30% of the electorate. In North Carolina now, thank you for keeping me on track, Nora. Right now, independents in North Carolina, they're even. 49-49 among independents in North Carolina. So Trump is winning them by the exit polls in Georgia by 11 points, but they're even in North Carolina. Finally, let's go to Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, the independents represent 24% of the electorate so far. Trump is up 50-44. So that also is divergent from the picture that we saw in 2020 when Joe Biden won independents 52-44. So the overall net of all of this is that in Pennsylvania and Georgia, Trump is doing well with independents, whereas those voted for the Democrat the last time around. And in North Carolina, it's right down the middle, 49-49 with independents.
Could that be decisive?
It could be decisive in a teeny tiny tight race. You want all the groups going for you that are up for grabs. And in this case, in
and if she's underperforming in independence, that's a big story.
Exactly.
All right, we've got so much more coming in. We've got to take a quick break. We'll dig into the latest results, also the path to victory. CBS News America Decides Election 2024 coverage returns in just a moment.
Get all the CBS.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I use sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
CBS Mornings Plus, clearly more news, more smart conversation.
More money-saving tips, more recipes.
More uplifting ways to get you on your way.
Plus, more sports, more weather.
Clearly, more CBS Mornings.
Plus,
The state of America, one state at a time.
We're just going about farming a bit differently.
I was in tears, and I said to myself that I can't make this about me.
I believe in our country, and I want to serve it.
Eye on a...
Welcome back to CBS News coverage of Election Night 2024. We're going to talk about Paths to Victory with Maurice Dubois in a minute. But first, look at this projection. CBS News projects that Josh Stein has won the governor's race in North Carolina. You may remember this story because Mark Robinson had been backed by Donald Trump. He had been called MLK on steroids, and then it was alleged by some and uncovered by some CNN reporting that Mark Robinson had posted some racist and misogynist stuff on a porn site. And so they cut off the funds in that state for that Republican candidate, and Josh Stein has emerged victorious, according to our CBS News projection. Now to Maurice Dubois with our Paths to Victory. Good to see you, Maurice. And this is, I think, it's early in the night, and we haven't projected any of the battleground states yet, but we can show people. But I know you're going to tell us how each of these candidates can get to 270.
The road to 270, right? A lot of us got into journalism, by the way, because there'd be no math. But here we are. This is all about the numbers, and the numbers do tell the story. So this starting map, Nora, is where we are at the moment. Very, very early. That's the headline. The night is young. 99 to 27, Donald Trump is leading. But we can take you to what we consider to be the starting point. This is based on past history, likely patterns expected to play out this year as well. So the red states showing Donald Trump's likely wins, and the blue states showing Kamala Harris's likely wins as a starting point. So she would have 226 to his 219. In the middle are 93 states in white, up for grabs, the battlegrounds, right? So let's take a look at a couple of the paths to victory. For Kamala Harris, the most likely and the one that she's banking on the most is what traditionally Democrats have won. Pennsylvania taking 19 there, Michigan taking 15 there, and Wisconsin taking 10 electoral votes.
The so-called blue wall strategy.
Exactly, the blue wall, all the bricks there in order. Joe Biden won them. Donald Trump, by the way, won them back in 2016. But this is traditional Democratic territory. You see it gives her 270 right there. She becomes the next president of the United States. Easiest path, if easy could be used here.
Exactly. Doesn't look easy tonight, right?
Nothing easy about this. It's very, very much a cliffhanger. But if Donald Trump were to flip Georgia back, right? Remember, he lost by fewer than 12,000 votes, 11,799 votes, to be exact. If he were to flip Georgia back into the red column, and then North Carolina, 16 more electoral votes there, and to hold on to that, he won that one by 75,000 back in 2020. Yes, 2020. And then if he were to take Pennsylvania, he would become the next president of the United States, 270 right there. So it shows you how critical each of these states is at this point. Pennsylvania just closed. If that were to go the other way, you know, that takes it right out of his hands, and now he has to go elsewhere to find votes, and that would be, say, Arizona and Nevada. Does that bring him closer?
Closer, but not yet.
251, a long way. He'd have to go into one of the blue walls and take one of those bricks out of that. He'd need at least 15. Whoops, sorry, 15. He'd get it right there, and call that 266. He'd still need one more state. He'd still need to get to Wisconsin to get over the top. So you can see how critical Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, they all are to both candidates.
Maurice Dubois, thank you. Want to turn now to Cecilia Vega, because Cecilia, I know you did some reporting in Pennsylvania. What are we learning about what may be happening in the Keystone State?
Yeah, we're just back from a reporting trip there. Look, this is the holy grail. Margaret said it at the top of the show with its 19 electoral college votes. And I think, Nora, to understand the significance of Pennsylvania, all you got to do is look back to the final day of campaigning. Both candidates there, Donald Trump telling everybody, if we win Pennsylvania, we'll win this whole ball of wax. Kamala Harris ending her final rally on the steps of the famous Rocky Steps there. But look, Al Schmidt, the Secretary of State, told me we are probably not going to know the results from Pennsylvania tonight.